Now that is the Unfiltered Band. It means another episode of Unfiltered, episode 101, as we get the 411, or maybe you want to call this Braves Phillies 101, and get you into school. If you are not already learned, you should be on the Unfiltered Revolution at Casey Stern. Get on Twitter, jump in the bio, hit the YouTube channel, get videos of all of the interviews, the guests, the episodes, conversations, and rants, including the first conversation I had with my guest today, Mark Bowman, who will join me here today to discuss, among other things, of course, the Phillies and Braves, which we would have thought a couple of days ago, Mr. Bowman, would have been you and I discussing their regular season situation, because there wouldn't be a Phillies-Braves, because there would never be a Phillies. I want to start with that. Are you anything can happen in 2 games, right? We've been there forever. Yet still, are you as surprised as I am that the Phillies came out of that series?
No doubt. Especially you go back to when they got swept by the Cubs, whatever that was at that point in time. I think there's 6 games remaining. You're thinking, okay, the Brewers have to show enough life somewhere along the lines here to pass the Phillies. But, to their credit, they won just enough. And then all of a sudden you get in that best of 3 and you've got Wheeler and Nola, and you see the benefit of having great starters in the postseason once again.
Yeah, and look, and give Segura, who's got a great story. I mean, he's been through all kinds of stuff off the field. He gets big hits. Their bullpen, hey, look, Arenado and Goldschmidt had opportunities. They did not pay off for them. Maybe it'll pay off for you. We are, as always, presented by our good friends on Bet Online. And if we tell you that football is back, Bet Online remains your number one source. All your football betting needs this season. Latest odds, matchup info, player news, and game trends. So your continued source for all sports wagering info. Bet Online's got live betting, free contests, live scores, giveaways all season long. Always the fastest and easiest way to bet all your favorite sports and events: MLB, MMA, tennis, boxing, even golf. Head over to betonline.ag. Join and get your 100% welcome bonus with your first deposit. Get over with the promo code BELIEVE. You got to use the promo code BELIEVE, BLEAV, to get your rewards. It's Bet Online where the game starts. Let's get started here in episode 101. And I want to continue kind of bounce around a little bit and then obviously dig deep into this series. But you're sitting here as kind of you wait for things like the Braves team is doing. What's your thought as you sit there and you watch Cleveland, 15 innings of scoreless baseball? Other than wondering how long that would feel if you had been covering it in the press box. That's quite an underrated scene in Cleveland, right? Like you and I saw this when we're there watching what they did down the stretch those couple of years in that World Series run. That was a madhouse. I had to watch that. I watched that highlight literally, Mark, like 10 times. I put a tweet out because I was so jacked up just watching that fan base after all of that time, like a soccer game, 0-0, finally getting a home run. What was your take watching that?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of feelings there. First of all, I think we all feel great for Tito Francona. Secondly, I went to school at the University of Dayton and graduated in '96. So I was right there for the start of, the great Indians run that you saw the '94 season in with the strike, and '95, just to see just how every night it was. I think that was that year that they had the baseball network or something. So some Cleveland games weren't. Yeah, it was. Remember, it was shown. Like some games the Cincinnati games were shown in our house, but other times we had to go to the bar to see Cleveland, or maybe we just had to go to the bar for all of them. But anyhow, the campus was awesome. You know how great the fans are there in Cleveland. That was cool to see. That atmosphere kind of reminded me of that, and then also 15 innings kind of reminded me of when you and I were teammates and the Braves were in Houston for about 18 innings.
Yeah, I remember that. That was Chris Burke. Is that right? Is that his
Chris
name?
Burke.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. That's right. I remember that. I talked about that with my buddy Lidge many times with that game.
It was our old teammate Jim Maloney shut his computer before Osmus came up to bat, and he said, "This game's over."
Yeah, that's so he did the Sal Licata. He did the Sal Licata. Just listen in a little, which we'll get to. Don't worry. In a little bit of a different variety. The other AL series quickly. I mean, look, I was, in watching from afar, Toronto's dangerous. I'm a huge fan of Alek Manoah. I think he's got a really bright future. He reminds me a lot of Rocket in like kind of like just the size and dominant like presence that he carries as a pitcher. They got all the trimmings. Happy to see Springer's okay because that was scary after that thing yesterday. But how about the Seattle Mariners? I mean, to get into the playoffs when, everybody's waiting for that other shoe to drop all season, it doesn't. Then nobody picking them. I didn't, right? In Toronto. To come back down. Now, look, there's two ways to look at it. If you're a Jays fan, you're in therapy for a long time now after this. So we'll stay positive. But that's one of the best comebacks you're ever going to see. And by the way, Romano, whether he should have been in that game or not, one of the most dominant closers in the game. Just your thought on kind of watching Seattle and that story now move on to the next round and continue here against Houston.
It's a wonderful story, and I'm really glad that I was in Seattle for a few days, just a couple of weeks ago when they were starting to build that. Hey, it looks like they're going to be in the playoffs, and just talking about how long it's been. Going back there to 2001, as you said, and I can't wait to see Game 3 there next week and just see the excitement. It's a great young team. We all know how dynamic Julio Rodriguez is. The pitching staff is. I don't know if what's the best word. Maybe underrated. I think they're going to. It will be a very competitive series here against the Astros.
Especially if they can get a game early, Mark. If they can make the Castillo start count, because he can't go now in game one, and that's what happens when you turn around. It's the same thing when we get into this series that the Phillies are going to try and do. They're going to their goal is make the Wheeler and Nola starts count. And how do you do that? You win one of the first two. And then all of a sudden, we got those two guys turning around at home. And, hey, look, that's tough to beat. You only got to win 3 to win a series, right? That kind of the way you look at all of these series, right? For the Mets, if they win today, make DeGrom count, right? I mean, that's kind of the thing. Luis Castillo, you want to make that start when he turns around into game 3 at 1-1, where you could then take control and somehow try and shock the world and beat Houston. That's what it's about for these wild card teams.
That's all exactly. I mean, if the Mets win tonight, they're right back to any bit of optimism you had about the Mets on heading into Friday night's game. It's right back there because all of a sudden you come back with who do you want in game 1 of the? It's probably going to be.
Well, here's the thing with that, right? So we'll talk about that briefly with what's going to happen tonight. They put, you never root for an injury, but I said this morning, having Joely Rodriguez get injured so you could put Taijuan Walker back on the roster was important because Tyler McGill, who has a great potential as a starter, has been just terrible out of the bullpen. They need to go to Walker quick if Bassett's not good. That will determine what happens in LA. I think Taijuan Walker is probably your game 1 guy in Los Angeles if he doesn't pitch in this game tonight. And then Scherzer comes back in game 2, and then you turn around and you got DeGrom in game 3, right? And then Scherzer short in game 5, assuming, again, we're playing this way out now. They may not even win this game. But to the point you're making, and the Braves will be the same way with Fried. And when you think about it, they've got multiple options and Wright and Strider when healthy and Morton and all of that. But you're trying to make your horses matter. That's what it always is in the postseason. No different.
You send them out there, and you don't know if they're going to go a mile and a half or they're just going to give you a nice sprint, But some way, somehow, you want them to navigate the track as effectively as they can. So, I mean,
let me close the NL East before we get into the series on this, because you and I haven't talked since it ended, right? I want you, because you could be honest with me. I want you to tell me if you think, because I am unbiased when I cover it. Clearly, I mean, I don't lie about who I root for, but if you think that I'm not being hard enough on them, I want you to tell me. All right. I look at it this way: the Braves took the division. Did the Mets choke away opportunities? They did, but those were against the Cubs in September, against the Nationals. They didn't choke when they came here. They got beat. They got beat in every facet of the game. They got beat in every phase of the game. They lost 6 of the last 7 times they played in Atlanta, and you got to win on the road to win divisions, regardless of how many wins. Am I being too kind to them you can be as harsh as you want to be. Do you look at it like I do? They choked away opportunities, probably, sure, to extend, right, or to keep the lead. But I look at the Braves just basically took it from them. You see it that simple when you look back at this division?
I mean, the Braves were given an opportunity. The Mets, gave them an opportunity by losing those games, like you said, against the Cubs, the Nats, whoever there. When the Braves were supposed to be playing, a better schedule and all that kind of stuff. Those games, those bumps in the road there for the Mets. That's heard Alonso say the same thing you did. The Braves were the better team for those 3 days.
Absolutely. And for 4 months.
Yes. The end of the last 4 months, The one thing I would say different is I left Citi Field on whatever that was, August 7th or whatever, and said, well, there was one team that's clearly better than the other. And, everything that happened from there, I think at that point in time, as late as August 11th, the lead was 7 games. The Braves deserved it. They played an incredible 4 months, but the Mets did not. The Mets had opportunities, but it's not like they just completely blew it away. They played, they won 60%.
They won 101 games. I mean, by the way, that's the second best in the franchise history, right? So, they did things that teams that in 2015 who made the World Series didn't do. In 2000 made the World Series didn't do. The 99 team where Kenny Rogers walked Andrew Jones didn't do that, right? So it's you got to take now. If they lose this series, certainly if they would have lost looking like they didn't game 1, even worse. But still, if they lose this wild card series, it'll only be remembered for what we just discussed. They got to get to the Dodgers series. If you lose to the Dodgers, I don't think anybody can really cry about that because we know how good the Dodgers are. I want to let's start to kind of look ahead to what to expect. Atlanta clearly could not have expected Philly, I would imagine, but they've got them. Forgive me if I'm mistaken, but at the end of the season when they played each other, it was in a 3-game series. The Phillies took a game or 2 from them the last time that they faced each other.
The very last series was a 4-game series, and it ended with a 12-inning or 11 or 12-inning game. Yeah.
And they split it? They split it, right?
Split it. The Phillies took the first 2, the Braves took the last 2, yeah.
Okay. Do you take regular season, it is what it is, right? If you're looking from the Philly side, did you see anything different from the rest of the season in which the Mets and the Braves, to me, and you give me your take, had just annihilated Philadelphia? They looked so clearly far away better than that team when each of those teams faced them. But Philly got them twice in that series. You learn anything from that? Anything that you think Philly could take from that moving into the series?
I mean, even just a week before that, the Braves had swept the Phillies in Atlanta. And it just, you went into that series thinking the Phillies are overmatched. And the Braves and the Mets are in a different category than the Phillies, especially, no doubt, over 162 games. Now, when you're able to throw Wheeler and Nola, I get it. You get that much closer. You get you get Harper in that lineup, which, a lot of the summer they didn't have him. I think, one difference I'd like to say especially from 2021 to 2022 is Alec Baum now catches the ball more than he used to. The defense, the infield defense,
it's still a mess sometimes.
Yeah. He is. It's not as bad as that day when I tweeted, I can't believe there's not an E. There's not an E in Baum. That's when I tweeted that. I think he's gotten a little better since then. But
you just love endearing yourself to fan bases. You love endearing yourself to the fan bases. Go ahead. Continue.
I got bodyguards everywhere I go.
You don't need them. I probably should have some, but go ahead.
Yeah. I think defensively they're doing a little bit better in the infield. It still feels like a Sunday league softball team at times, especially in the outfield. But I think defensively they've improved slightly enough to that's one improvement I've seen over the course of the year.
Let's start with the rotation for the Braves. Where are we? Because I've been so into these 4 series and obviously clearly into this Met hell and like a slice of almost heaven for like 5 minutes last night. Where are we on Strider right now, and where we sit with him?
Strider threw he was supposed to throw a bullpen today. This is running live, right?
Yes. Well, it'll run. Sunday. It'll close enough to live. Yes. Yeah.
Okay,
Sunday.
There you go. Sunday. Yeah. So we'll see how he feels here Monday, and go from there. But there's a lot of optimism about him being available. He has not pitched in a game since September 18th. So let's say he throws this side, he's fine, and then they have him throw 2 innings of live BP, and they were happy with that. Say 2 days from now, and then all of a sudden you get to games 3 or 4, and you say, start be an opener. I think basically take me as far as you can.
Your first, so kind of like a first start back kind of a feel.
9
Mark,
to 12
you're thinking, like a first start back kind of a feel, like
I'd say so.
Friday,
yeah.
maybe. Yeah. Okay. To try and work him to gain length,
and if he's able to get out there
to gain length for the next round.
Now all of a
trying
sudden,
to stretch him out. Okay.
Exactly. Get him ready for that next round. I mean, you can't look too far ahead unless you're the Mets and you were going to skip DeGrom altogether. But
All right. Well, first of all, I think that was more for. Okay, I will say this. We're not going to get into this, but I think that had a lot to do with the blister. I think they were
yeah,
trying to rest that if they could. I think a lot was made of Buck trying to be cute, but I don't think people really thought about enough that, hey, look, if you could avoid with a blister issue because he hasn't been himself. And yesterday, you
right.
could tell the feel of his pitches. Look, I give him a ton of credit because he was gutsy and balled his ass off without. I mean, I've never seen him. Anyone who's ever seen DeGrom, him throwing an inning and a half straight of just sliders. I mean, he
Yeah,
literally was having trouble gripping the. So he do give him credit. Got through, did what he did, right? Maybe his
yeah,
last start ever with a Met. But I think it was more about the blister than anything
yeah.
else, even though Buck is doing the Belichick and not going to tell you that. But it's, that's my own thought.
Yeah,
But Strider, obviously, we're not going to get him till game 3 or 4. They're so stacked with the pitching in the front end because Morton's such a gamer and a big time pitcher in big spots. I know he
yeah.
didn't pitch great against the Mets in his last outing. I want to ask you about Kyle Wright. What happened to him from last year to this year, and how much did he become this, maybe in part, Mark, from the confidence do you think that he gained in that postseason last year, being a bigger guy and having more of a role than anybody expected him to then?
I think, first of all, for last year, you got to go back. 2017's fifth overall draft pick. By 2018, he's in the big leagues. He's pitching in relief in the, late that year. And then all of a sudden, 2019, 2 to 3 starters get hurt there at the beginning of the year. And he's in the starting rotation the first weekend against the Phillies in Philadelphia. And he was swimming in water he wasn't ready to navigate yet. And that became obvious throughout that year. 2020, I just think he was lost. I don't think he had, he was at a point in his career where he needed spring training. He needed 6 weeks. He needed guidance. And it was just an odd year for everybody. And while he finished that year strong, he still hadn't had that time to just say, give me 15 to 20 starts uninterrupted at the AAA level. And that's what he got last year. And then all of a sudden he's, still not in play in the division series, not in play in the NLCS. And then all of a sudden he's thrown on the World Series roster. So, okay. I think Anoa had been hurt at that point in time. And that was probably a big reason why Kyle stepped in there. 8th inning, game 2, he says he's warming up in the bullpen. And he said, I guarantee you I didn't throw a strike, and he comes out and it comes out and it strikes out the only 3 batters he faces there. It was a mop-up duty. And, the Braves lost, 7 or 8 to nothing that game. And so move ahead to Dylan Lee starting there in game 4. And bases loaded, 1 out. And Kyle, I think, might have been warming up probably before Dylan threw his first pitch because they had no clue what was going to happen that game. But I don't think they wanted to put the pressure on Kyle to be the starter. Don't sit there and think about it all day, but they knew he was the guy that they wanted to have get them through however many innings. So he comes in, bases loaded, 1 out. They only one of those runs scores. He only gives up 1 more run over the next 4 2/3 innings. That was a big game. They came back and won that game. They had
That was huge.
Yeah. I mean, you could say that 4 2/3 innings he threw that day were as important as any innings they got that whole series. So, you see him, the next day or two, but whatever. You see him in spring training this year when he shows up, and the eyes are different. It's not wide-eyed. It's not, what's going to happen to me next? Where am I going? He knew he was in the rotation from the start of spring training, and it's pretty impressive what he's done, because even when he has that tough inning now, he minimizes damage and he comes back out the next inning and it's fine. And that was the biggest thing with him. It was mentally, he was shot. I'd like to go back to that 2020 season and allow him to be do some of the things his own way, but he had to go. They had some analytics guys having him throw too many sliders, this and that. And if he just could have gone and found himself at the minor league level like he did in 2021 that year, maybe we would have even seen this more last year. But combine that experience or that chance to get himself right at the minor league level in the World Series, and you find yourself with a very talented and now mentally strong pitcher.
Let's go to the bullpen. Stay with the pitching. Kenley with 41 saves, was it? 41 out of 47 or whatever. Anybody would take that. Love what you saw down the stretch and in those games against the Mets, where that is postseason baseball, right? That's the playoffs, and he did what he needed to do. How much did that officially stamp the forgetting about that 3 blown out of 7 stretch that he had for those around the team, Mark?
Yeah, he did. He did. And I think, when you and I talked a week or two ago, it was, hey, he was already kind of writing himself at that point in time, but it was, what he did there in that Mets series and just down the stretch, final, I don't know, I think it ended up being the final 10 appearances at least were scoreless. And he became that guy again. He kept the ball down in the zone more than he had been. Raisel Iglesias is great. He'll probably be
he's been so brilliant, man. He's so brilliant.
But you need at least 3 of those guys. You need 3 of those lockdown guys there to have a great bullpen, and and that's what they have now with Iglesias, Mentor, and Kenley. So
they're set up in the pen. Their staff is right. It's set up with Strider healthy. They're better than they were last year. They don't have the Will Smith question going in. You got better than that, and Iglesias has been dominant. Let's go to the lineup. There aren't many questions in terms of we know what you're getting, especially now that Olsen got hot again, other than having a few days off, which people will discount, but it is a thing. It is possible that even though the Phillies won't have Nola or Wheeler, that the Braves may have to scratch across a run or two to get through game 1. And I think that a lot of these teams at home, you know that as well as I do, just simulate all you want. It's different than taking ABs and having a week off. It is like coming out of an all-star break. It's sometimes a rough thing. Second base, I want to start there. Arcia was getting a lot of starts down the stretch over Grissom. Is that what you expect in the postseason? Will we see Arcia
at
second?
Yeah, I do. I see Arcia getting he's just so good defensively. And, I can't remember who I said it to last night. I said, he holds the Brewers record for most postseason homers. I think it's like 5 or 6. I know. I found it out last year.
Is that real?
Yeah, we went up there for
it's
the
not
NLDS
Fielder
last
or Braun or somebody like that.
He may be tied with Fielder, but it's like 5 or 6. Yeah, wow. So he has come up in some big moments. He like a lot of people, he's a streaky guy, but he's the better defender right now. Now I will say this as well, though, they have not given up on Vaughn Grissom. He had an at bat the other day, a 12-8 game on the last day of the regular season. 2 outs in the ninth, and everybody in the building is just saying, all right, just one more pitch, the season's over. It was ended up being a 10-11 pitch at bat because this kid just battled. And I said something to Snit after the game and said the kid's, a heck of a fighter. He started the year in A-ball this year, though. What he did for this team was super, but I think, at this time, they're going to, they feel more comfortable having Arcia there, have the better defensive player and the guy who has been in some of these big moments before. So I expect to see that. The other surprise that we saw, because all of a sudden last week in the 2 most important games of the year, Saturday and Sunday against the Mets, Ozuna's in the DH spot instead of Contreras. Now they're facing righties at the time. Contreras, you take a step back, say, okay, what has he done against righties and lefties? It's a big difference this year. It's 1.1 something OPS against lefties and 700 some against righties. And you take a look at September, and Ozuna has been more effective. So I wouldn't be surprised to see Ozuna back there in the DH spot against righties. Now, I also expect to see Ranger Suarez in game 1. So let's go back to Contreras being there and at the DH spot. But when they face Nolan Wheeler, Ozuna will be that guy.
And Harris in the 3-hole, we're pretty much is a static thing now, or is that kind of dependent, you think?
That'll probably, against the lefty, I bet you he's down there in about 7th or 8th spot this time, because it is a big difference with him too. Now all of a sudden you start your lineup with Acuna and Swanson and probably put Riley in that 3 spot against the lefty. I think you probably even just put d'Arnaud there in the 4th spot and then drop Olsen to the 5th spot. But right now, Olsen, the way he finished the season, he was hit. He never had trouble against lefties before this year, and I think he kind of started to find himself there.
He hitting everybody now. I mean, forget it. He got hot. He got hot the wrong time for me, the right time for you. And I love Battles. He's a terrific guy. But he got. I mean, man, did he get Man, did he get hot. Speaking of hot at the wrong time for me, I've talked to you about Dansby Swanson before. I was saying this to people before that Mets series, and I don't know if I made this comp to you, but I'll make it now. And I'm not comparing. He's a right-handed hitter. The guy I'm going to mention is a left-handed hitter, but he is so Chase Utley for me, and I mean that as a giant compliment, not as a negative thing. To me, the comp of who he is as a player, that's the guy I think of, who just seems to just a baseball player. He's a leader by example, by everything that he does. Maybe he's more vocal than Chase was because they had Jimmy and others there. But every time it seems like the time for a lineup where you need the clutch hit, it's his spot, and he's getting it. He's going to get the big home run, even if he doesn't have the most on the team. All the things that I saw from Chase Utley. Now, granted, it's because these guys gave me a lot of pain as a Met fan, so I understand it from agony. But do you see similarities with that in covered all those years against the guy? And by the way, I mean that as a giant compliment because Chase Utley was a hell of a player. But that's who he reminds me of when I think about the mental fortitude, the dog that's in him, and the way that he carries himself as a baseball player.
I mean, I completely understand what you say about Utley because, you saw the same thing from the Braves' perspective. It's that is a significant, a great compliment, because, Dansby's just that guy. He always talks about, okay, why are you able to come through in the clutch? It's not, and I'm not saying go look at his close and late stats and that kind of stuff. I'm saying just think about big moments and big games. Why is he always the guy that hits the, 2 free throws with 1 second left on the clock, or he's driving the 3-2 out pitch, into the gap, whatever. He always talks about how in high school basketball he always wanted the ball and this kind of stuff, and then we saw some of those highlights from Vandy. He hit a big home run against Indiana in the 9th inning one time, and felt like a couple of times in the regionals or out there in Omaha he had big hits. He does. He wants the ball. Whether he wants you to have him on the mound, or he wants to be able to shoot those free throws, or he wants you to throw him that fade pass in the end zone. He is that guy. And he said, he grew up on a ball field. He had no choice but to develop this competitive spirit because of his older brothers and sisters, that kind of stuff. But he has that ability, that mental fortitude to take that game his game to a next level. I mean, you almost feel like if he was playing Augusta and was a stroke down, he would hole out from 150 yards on 18. He's just that kind of guy. And I think it does. It's always had a lot of self-confidence, and then as he's continued to be more productive at the big league level, that confidence just grows. So there's a couple of guys I would want. I think Travis d'Arnaud had one of the biggest at bats in that Mets series last week. Remember when he fouled off? What was that, Sunday night? Was that against?
No, I forgot. Yeah, of course I remember.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, of course I remember, and I love TDA, and I'm happy for him. But of course I remember.
He's the guy that the Mets released.
I'm aware of who he is. You want to tell me? You want to tell me about how they released Justin Turner too? Because I'm aware of that also. Thanks. So we can have a whole all-star team of those guys. Really, seriously.
So d'Arnaud had that big at bat there, but those kind of guys that are just going to go up there and battle you and find a way. It's Dansby's going to get paid this winter, and he deserves it.
Sure. That I said the same thing after last night. I was watching, and I'm a fan of the way he plays anyway. But I watched Nimmo last night, and I'm like, Scott's counting the amount of money he just earned him yesterday. Watching Nimmo go 3 for 3 with a walk, all the balls to the opposite side of the field as a leadoff hitter. I mean, he's counting money right now, Nimmo. So Swanson same way. I mean, look, and that's how. Not to bring up the name because our old pal, we love him to death as a person, but Freddie Gonzalez, wherever he is, if he's watching this, I don't want to bring up BJ Upton or Melvin or whatever I have to call him, but 8 home runs in a postseason or whatever it was for Tampa get you $75 million, right? So it's like this is how it goes. You come through when it counts, you get paid. I want to ask you 2 more. Let me go one here on Acuna. I know I can't remember how long ago it was, Mark, that it would seem late in the season that he was talking about, how, hey, look, regardless of how much recovery, he's still fighting. He's not 100%. And I think anybody understands that, not an excuse. But from what you see, I mean, how much is he battling? How close to, full-blown Ronald Acuna Jr. really is he right now?
I think, a few days off here and there certainly help. He's able to, get away from that pain and, the discomfort. I think we're probably seeing Ronald at about 80% in terms of just being able to just turn on balls and have that confidence on that knee with that knee. Now, every once in a while we'll see him drive a ball here and there, but we're not seeing it with the same regularity. He did run quite frequently this year. Got up to 30 stolen bases. Defensively, every once in a while you'll see him maybe look uncomfortable out there, but he's gotten to every ball he needs to. He still throws the ball great. But in terms of just being able to confidently swing like he did in the past, or to even just physically be able to do it, I think we've seen closer to 75 to 80%, just because just haven't seen that guy that can drive the ball to all fields like he did in the past. So
all right, I want to close here. I don't see. I'm with you on. Look, I didn't have the Phillies beating, and anybody could beat anybody, and that's how dumb it is. Like, I was like, no, the Phillies can't. I was every other series. I swear, I was like, well, the Rays, you can't ever count them out, right? Even the Guardians. Yeah, Toronto's at home, but I love what Seattle's. Every other series except this one, I was like, no, the Phillies can't win. Like, it's just like, I think also they've played their worst baseball over the year against the Mets and Braves. So you and I have seen them play terrible, and that's probably part of the problem, that we just we remember them the way that they don't want to be remembered. I want to put it this way, though, because I don't think they can win this series. I think they can win a game. You tell me Wheeler's going game 3 at home, they may get that game. I mean, CVP hasn't had a game in forever. It's going to be a crazy environment. It's possible, sure, but it may be 4, not 3. If the Braves were to have trouble with the Phillies or somehow lose this series, it would be because what? What's the thing that even is feasible that is the weakness or it could go wrong? Because that's what's hard to find with Atlanta, by the way. And it's a great statement about who they are, but sometimes you got to know what that is, even if you're the team itself. What is that thing that could be the bugaboo for them?
I'd say if the rotation doesn't prove to be as deep as we think it is right now, if Kyle Wright isn't ready to take, be that big game pitcher, if Charlie Morton, boy, that's kind of scary to think of him pitching a game in Philadelphia, with tendency to give up home runs. You might even think about starting him in game 2.
I was just going to say, you might want to start him in game 2 at home.
Yeah. So it's going to be the starting pitching. I mean, this is a team that there's no doubt. I mean, they live and die by the home run. There's a little bit, just enough consistency up and down that lineup, but to generate runs here and there. But this is a team that lives and dies by the home run, which a lot of times that wins or can win in the postseason. But I'd say that if they're starting rotation beyond Fried, I'm pretty confident in what you're going to get from Fried.
Me too.
If those next 3 guys aren't able to step up.
As long as he can, make sure wherever he goes at DoorDashes or Uber Eats his food, that doesn't have to cough it up like he did against the Mets. My goodness.
Yeah. It's kind of amazing how when did he get sick? It was right after the Mets, which I'm going to guess.
He was in the 5th. Yeah, it was the 5th. Was in the 5th inning. I was like, what? I was like, wait, what is he doing? My goodness. My goodness. Just be careful to eat solid foods, and you'll be fine. Yeah. Mark, appreciate you. I'll bug you as we go along the way, because I know even though the Mets. Well, let me ask you this before I let you run. Honest opinion. The Mets win this game tonight? You think they'll play the Dodgers? Do you think the Padres? Because it's a crapshoot anytime you talk about one game in baseball at all times. But the Mets have been like, which team's showing up? Yeah. Do you think that 7th inning yesterday, Alonso and Lindor hit homers in the game, they kind of woke up the bats, and now with the home crowds, San Diego's got an uphill climb, or you think the Mets are primed for another Met thing coming up here tonight?
Oh, San Diego has an uphill climb. I thought you were getting ready to ask me if the Mets could beat the Dodgers, and I do.
No. I'm talking about tonight.
Tonight, the Padres uphill climb. Yes, and they don't have many hills there in San Diego, so they're not ready for this.
Okay, fair enough. I hope you're right. If you're wrong, I'm going to blame you.
You mentioned Utley earlier. I was there that night that they came back from whatever game. That would have been game 3 in 2015 after, Utley had slid into Tejada.
Yeah.
And to hear that stadium that night, And we're going to hear that same kind of noise tonight. It won't be the hatred, but it will
No.
be that kind of. That's going to be a fun place to be tonight.
They score early. I think it's going to be very difficult for San Diego for many reasons. If they don't score early and the offense sputters and hangs around and you're the road team and then the Mets fans get quieter because they are just nervous and paranoid about everything.
Yeah.
Then all of a sudden it gets a little bit weird. But Mets score early, it may be a blowout. It's one of those kind of games. So we'll see. Because they've been holding Josh Hader forever. Everybody's talking about Josh Hader. He coming in the third inning. Eventually it's not going to matter. He'll be leaving Josh Hader in there for a while. He'll be thinking about Arcia's home runs, where I got to go look at that list now. Really? I'm like, are you serious? Orlando Arcia. I don't even think he got enough at bats to have that happen with Milwaukee. Wow. Okay.
Go check it out.
I'm going to check it out. I believe you. Mark, appreciate you, buddy.
All right. Take care.
Stay with us on the Unfiltered Revolution at Casey Stern. We'll keep them coming during the course of the postseason. Enjoy the baseball.